Hi, I'm Frederica Roberts, and I'm going to talk to you about the Brexit Testimonies Facebook group originally that became a massive project that culminated in this book, In Limbo. In Limbo is a collection of testimonies from EU citizens living in the UK as well as UK citizens living in the EU. It is now in its second edition and is available widely on Amazon in Kindle, paperback and hardback formats. And I will post the link as well in the description of this video. Now, I hope that whichever way you voted, whether you voted to leave the EU or to stay, if you're watching this video, that you'll keep watching, because hopefully you're somebody that is actually interested in the human aspect, and that whether you voted to leave or not, you never envisaged or wanted human beings to be treated in the way that they are. And that's why I'm recording this testimony, and I'm recording it now in December 2017, such a long time after the referendum in June last year, because it's taken me this long to try and actually make some sense of my thoughts and to try and order them and categorise them somehow, because my head frankly has been a mess and still is. On the 23rd of June last year, I felt like the world had just crumbled underneath my feet. I'm Italian and German. I've lived in this country for 27 years. I moved here when I was just 18, and I have built my life here. Now, unlike and I can't remember who it was that said it, I think it was a cabinet member, but somebody, a politician, described us as brave souls. Now, there are undoubtedly brave souls that come to this country because they're escaping really difficult conditions, and they have every right to be recognised for their bravery for making a new life. And they are not worth any more or any less than I am or the person next door or anything. But what I'm trying to get at is that we shouldn't all be lumped together, whether we are asylum seekers or refugees or illegal immigrants or legal migrants for economic reasons, or whether we've moved here out of love, whether we're EU citizens living here exercising our treaty rights, whether we are migrants from other non-EU countries. We are all different, and lumping us all together as one mass of other, that is how the hard right win, because that's kind of making us the other, the foreignness, the ones that are to blame for everything that's wrong in this country. And we lose our individuality, and the stories, like the stories in the book, they're lost in that, because we've just become this mass of foreignness and otherness. And we're not, we're individuals. So I am not a brave soul. I didn't move here to escape anything. I didn't move here to make a better life for myself. I had a brilliant life. I lived in Luxembourg as the daughter of EU civil servants working for the European Parliament. I went to the European school. I grew up speaking 6 languages and mingling with lots of people from different nationalities. And life, frankly, was pretty good. Luxembourg is a fairy tale, beautiful country. As a teenager, trust me, I did not appreciate that one little bit. But now that I'm an adult and I don't live there anymore, I appreciate just how lucky I was. And I had to go to university. Well, I didn't have to, but I wanted to go to university when I was 18, and there was no university in Luxembourg at the time because it's a tiny, tiny little country. And I could have gone pretty much anywhere, at least France, Germany, Italy, Belgium, I suppose, as well. But I chose the UK. I chose the UK because I liked the sound of the UK. It was cool, it had great music, it had Doc Martens. And I liked the UK because it has great universities. So I came to the UK. And I went to Bradford, and something happened in my first year at university. I, first of all, fell in love with Britain, and with Yorkshire particularly. I started to become very British. By the end of my first term at uni, I'd lost the little bit of a German accent. I'd lost the received pronunciation I had. I started to sound like I was from Yorkshire. And I dressed like a British person. I talked like a British person, I ate like a British person, and I loved everything British. And then something else happened a bit later on in that first year. I fell in love. I fell in love with Simon. Simon, who is and has been for quite a long time my husband and the father of my two wonderful daughters. So this idea of coming here and studying and then maybe moving to Italy, or at one point I was toying with the idea of going to the States and doing an MBA. Well, that all kind of went out of the window because I fell in love. I fell in love with Simon, I fell in love with Britain, and I stayed. And it was never a big plan. It just happened. I made a life here. And I think that's not unique. Speaking to other EU citizens, for a lot of us, that's how it happened. And so my life, well, 27 years in the UK, 16 years in Luxembourg, and the first 2 years of my life in Italy. And I have never lived in Germany, even though I did all my schooling in German. I have lots of German friends that I grew up with. I've never lived in Germany. So growing up in Luxembourg for 16 years, yes, it was home and it was wonderful and I loved it, but there was still a part of me that didn't quite feel that sense of belonging. When I came to the UK, something clicked. And it felt like home and it felt right. And of course, having two daughters here and a husband here and built an entire life and my working life and my entire adult life here, I often say I don't know how to adult anywhere else. I really don't. I've never been an adult anywhere else. So when people say, well, if you don't like it, go home. Where would I go to? Where would I go? This is home. 27 years in the UK, 16 years in Luxembourg, 2 years in Italy. This, the UK, is home. Yorkshire is home. I've never lived anywhere except Yorkshire. I live in Doncaster, and let me tell you, in the last 20 years or so of living in Doncaster, Doncaster has been transformed for the better, and it has been transformed for the better in great part thanks to EU funding. But let's park that to one side for a minute, because that's not what this video is about. It's about life, really, and being an EU citizen. So now I'm facing being called a bargaining chip, being called a brave soul, and my rights being kind of bargained away with a proposed settled status. That is not the same as what we have now, and we would not have the protection of the European Court of Justice. And frankly, I am terrified at the thought of being at the mercy of the partly incompetent and partly simply evil Home Office and its very deliberate hostile environment. What happens if they make a mistake and they decide that actually I'm not entitled to live here? They can freeze my bank accounts, they can detain me, they can do all sorts of things without me having any recourse. So it does terrify me. And even if I'm okay, I'm not okay with other people facing these situations, and other people are already facing these kinds of situations. So I'm not okay with that. Beyond that, there's this real sense of I don't really know who I am anymore. I feel like a big part of my identity was stripped away from me on the 23rd of June 2016. I really truly felt that this was home and that I belonged here. And I'm sorry, well, I'm not sorry actually, but I am getting really emotional about it, because I feel like a fish out of water. I feel emotionally homeless now. And I know I'm not alone in that. I just don't know how to fit and where I fit. If I were to leave, and part of me wants to because I'm fed up, but if I were to leave, where would I go? Nowhere else is home. And I would have to relearn everything, and I would have to try and restart my business elsewhere. And, you know, I've got a life here. Equally, I've got two daughters. One is already at university, the other one is starting next year. So I don't really want to leave them behind either. My husband has a very good job here. He does a very specialised job that only certain places would be able to accommodate. But he doesn't speak any other languages. So he has applied for Italian citizenship, so at least he has that option. But it's not an easy option, and there's no guarantees that we'd be able to move somewhere that would be able to accommodate his work. And he's the main breadwinner in our family, so that's also a consideration. But also, we might end up living somewhere where I also don't speak the language, so both of us wouldn't speak the language, which would be quite frustrating. I've also been told that I should want to be British, and why didn't I become British? And that makes me really angry and really sad, because frankly I feel like I've given everything to Britain. I've given my heart and soul to Britain. I have worked here, I've paid taxes here, but more importantly I have become British in every bit that matters. I look British, I sound British, I live and breathe British culture. My life is here. I can't keep saying it, but that's what it is. To all intents and purposes, I am British. I feel like I'm even betraying my home countries of Germany and Italy and even Luxembourg, because my language skills are deteriorating because I haven't got an accent. And when people are getting verbally abused or physically abused in the street for having an accent, I feel that me not being subjected to that and not being at risk of that because I don't sound or look foreign is a betrayal of them. And every time I see somebody that speaks a different language or has an accent, I just want to go up to them and give them a hug and say, I'm one of you, I'm one of you, I get it. So I feel like everything's being eroded, and I've let it happen willingly. I've even shamefully not brought up my daughters to be bilingual at least, and that's a long story that's nothing to do with any of this, but I do regret it every single day, not having given them that gift of languages. And so having become so British and having adopted everything that is British and Britain, and having passed that on to my children, I feel that asking me to go that extra step to become British by citizenship, by nationality, is one step too far. Apart from which, it's never been necessary. And I'm stubborn enough that I don't want to do it just because I have to now. And it's also a very expensive and very, very difficult process. So why should I have to? Why should I have to? So I hope my husband becomes Italian so that at least it leaves options open. We have applied, so fingers crossed he qualifies. I mean, on paper he does, so it should just be a question of time. And I don't know what the future will hold. I'm an optimist at heart, and I work in positive psychology and character education and positive education. So I know that as human beings we're all resilient, and I know that from my own life I'm very resilient. So whatever happens, I'll be okay. I'll survive. I'll carry on whatever life looks like in the future. But at the moment I'm very upset and I'm very angry, because none of this should be happening to me. None of this should be happening to other European citizens. And let's not forget that a lot of us European citizens are indeed married to British citizens, parents of British citizens, and friends of British citizens. So what's happening to us is not just happening to us, it's happening to the people we love, to our friends and families, and it's affecting British citizens all over the UK. It's affecting far more than 3 million people, and the way I'm feeling at the moment is very similar to the way that British citizens living in EU countries are feeling, that also don't know what's happening to them. So this situation, we are truly in limbo, caught between two worlds, and we don't really know what's going to happen to us. And this is my Brexit testimony. And if you want to read more, please get the book and buy it for other people. Share it with your MP. If you have been touched or moved by what I've been saying, not just about my life, but just thinking about what you may have read in the book, then please write to your MP, write to your MEP, make a noise, attend protests, etc. Do whatever you can to let politicians know that treating human beings like this is not okay, and that you won't stand for it. And if enough of us make a noise, hopefully we can change that. So it's still been quite a long video, nearly 15 minutes, but a bit shorter than version 1. So thank you for your patience, and I hope that you can help turn this around. Bye.